The priest's hands are red to the wrists. Blood runs hot down his forearms, dripping onto white marble. The pig is still twitching on the altar, throat opened, bronze vessels catching what pours out. This is not metaphor. This is December 17th, 200 years before Christ was born, and the price of 7 days of freedom is being paid in blood. The animal stops moving. The priests examine what spilled from inside. Liver, intestines, heart. They are looking for signs. Is Saturn pleased? The omens are favorable. They always are. Some of the meat will burn as offering, smoke rising to the god whose feet are bound in his own temple. The rest will be distributed. Everyone will eat. Slave and master, rich and poor. Because starting tonight, the world inverts. For 7 days, Rome celebrates Saturnalia. And Saturnalia is where your Christmas began. This is Pandora's project. The seals are breaking. Christmas carries secrets that authorities spent centuries trying to bury. What you celebrate every December 25th is not what you think it is. Every tradition your family holds sacred, every symbol you decorate with, was assembled from 2,000 years of blood sacrifice, theological warfare, and brilliant deception. We will trace Christmas from its true beginning, not in a manger in Bethlehem, but on Roman altars where animals screamed, through Germanic forests where bodies hung from sacred trees, through Puritan England where celebrating Christmas meant imprisonment, through Victorian parlors where Charles Dickens invented the Christmas you think is ancient, and finally to corporate boardrooms where Santa Claus was painted red to sell soft drinks. Every claim will be verified, every date checked, every violent act traced to historical record. If you value content that examines beloved traditions without sentimentality, that presents deeply researched history in immersive form, then subscribe. Leave a comment telling me which Christmas tradition you will never see the same way again. We begin not with angels singing to shepherds, but with screaming in a Roman temple. We begin 200 years before Christ. We begin with sacrifice. We begin with Saturnalia. We begin with blood. Part 1. Where Christmas learned to bleed. The flesh of the sacrificed pig is butchered immediately. Blood still warm. The priests work quickly, practiced hands separating meat from bone. Some will be burned. The rest distributed to everyone gathered in the forum. This is not charity. This is ritual. Everyone must eat. Everyone must participate. Saturn is an old god, older than Jupiter, older than the Republic itself. Romans believe his golden age was paradise. No slaves, no masters, all people living in equality and abundance. But that time ended. Saturn was overthrown, and the harsh world of hierarchies began. Only during Saturnalia does the Golden Age return. The festival lasts 7 days. Beginning at sunset on December 17th, Roman law changes. Courts close. Businesses cease. War cannot be declared. Executions cannot be performed. And most significantly, slaves are freed from work. Not permanently, not legally, but functionally. For 7 days, masters serve slaves at table. For 7 days, hierarchy dissolves. For 7 days, the world turns upside down. We know this because a Roman writer named Macrobius recorded it around the year 400 in the Common Era. He describes the sacrifices, the feasting, the gift-giving, the freedom. He describes a festival so central to Roman identity that refusing to participate was refusing to be Roman. But Macrobius also preserves something darker. He mentions, citing earlier historians whose works are now lost, that in ancient times, Saturnalia involved not animal sacrifice but human sacrifice. That the woolen bonds on Saturn's feet, untied during the festival, once bound human victims. that the wax figurines Romans gave as gifts, the sigillaria, were substitutes for something that had once been flesh. We cannot prove this directly. No Roman text says explicitly that humans were sacrificed during Saturnalia in historical times. But we know the Carthaginians, Rome's great enemies, sacrificed children to their god Baal-Hamon, who was identified with Saturn. We know thousands of cremated infant remains have been found in Carthage's Tophet, the sacred precinct. We know that when Rome finally destroyed Carthage in 146 before the Common Era, they found a civilization that had fed its children to fire for centuries in Saturn's name. And we know that Saturnalia's customs follow patterns that appear in festivals worldwide where human sacrifice is documented. The temporary freedom, the role reversal, the gift giving. The mock king who rules the festival then returns to normal status, or in some traditions is killed when the festival ends. These patterns are too specific, too widespread, to be coincidental. After the sacrifice, the transformation begins. Romans remove their togas, the formal garments that mark citizenship and status. They put on colorful, informal clothing. Everyone wears the pileus, a felt cap that symbolizes freedom. Usually only freed slaves wear this cap. During Saturnalia, everyone wears it. Everyone is free. The gambling explodes through the city. Dice games are illegal in Rome year-round. During Saturnalia, they are mandatory. Romans bet on everything. The gambling is not rebellion. It is ritual. The festival requires disorder. What is forbidden must become permitted. What is permitted must become forbidden. Sexual license begins. The poet Catullus calls Saturnalia the best of days and describes love affairs and freedom. The philosopher Seneca complains that the whole mob has let itself go in pleasures. Prostitution, already legal in Rome, flourishes. Temporary marriages form. Sexual boundaries dissolve. This is not mere debauchery. This is fertility magic. The world is dying in winter. Life must be celebrated, encouraged, created. The feasting begins. Tables overflow with food. Roasted meats, honeyed wine, exotic fruits, elaborate cakes. The feast is communal. Rich invite poor. Masters feed slaves. Everyone eats together. Because in Saturn's golden age, there was no rich or poor, no master or slave, only abundance for all. The gift-giving begins. Small presents are exchanged throughout the 7 days. Wax figurines, pottery, candles. The gifts represent the Golden Age's generosity when all shared everything willingly. But the gifts also carry the shadow of what they replaced. The human-shaped wax figures that once represented actual humans, actual children, actual sacrifices. At the center of it all presides the Saturnalicious Princeps, the Lord of Misrule, chosen by lot to rule the festival. He issues absurd commands that everyone must obey. Sing while standing on one leg. Confess your most embarrassing secret. Serve wine to your slaves while naked. His power is absolute for 7 days. Then it vanishes. He returns to whoever he was. This pattern, this structure, this festival existed for 400 years before Christianity arrived in Rome. By the time the first Christians appeared in the capital preaching a crucified Jewish Messiah, Saturnalia was ancient tradition, beloved by everyone, impossible to eliminate. The early Christians did not celebrate Christmas. They celebrated Easter, the resurrection. Birth mattered less than death and rebirth. The Gospels provide no date for Jesus' birth. They offer no command to celebrate it. Early Christian leaders actively discouraged birthday celebrations as pagan customs. But as Christianity spread, as it gained converts, as it moved from persecuted sect to state religion under Constantine in the 4th century, it encountered a problem. How do you convince Romans to abandon Saturnalia? The festival is central to identity, to yearly rhythm, to psychological need for release and celebration. Banning it will create resentment, resistance, perhaps rebellion. The solution was brilliant and brutal. Do not ban Saturnalia. Absorb it. Take the date, the customs, the emotional power, but change the meaning. Replace Saturn with Christ. Transform pagan festival into Christian holy day without changing what people actually do. The first written mention of December 25th as Christ's birth date appears in a Roman document from 336 in the Common Era. The chronograph of 354, a calendar compiled for wealthy Christians, lists December 25th as the date when Christ was born. By this time, Constantine has made Christianity the empire's official religion. The Church has imperial backing. But the choice of date was not random. It was calculated appropriation of existing sacred time. Saturnalia ended on December 23rd. 2 days later, Romans celebrated Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of the unconquered sun, honoring Sol Invictus, a sun god whose worship Constantine himself had promoted before converting to Christianity. The winter solstice, when the sun stops declining and begins its return, was the sun's birthday. Life conquering death, light conquering darkness. The Church placed Christ's birth precisely there, between Saturn and the sun. They declared Jesus the true unconquered light, the true source of renewal. Same date, same themes, different theological meaning imposed over existing structure. Pope Julius I formally established December 25th as Christmas around 350. But establishing the date and convincing Christians to celebrate were different challenges. Many church fathers opposed Christmas entirely. They argued that celebrating births was pagan. Christians should focus on Christ's death and resurrection, not his birth. But practical reality overcame theological purity. Christians lived in Roman society. They watched neighbors celebrating Saturnalia, enjoying feasts and gifts and joy. Forbidding participation made Christianity seem harsh and joyless. Converts resented being denied the year's greatest celebration. So the Church adapted. They borrowed everything. The December date, the 7 to 12 days of celebration, the gift-giving, the feasting, the greenery brought indoors, the candles and lights, even the concept of a sacred child, though now the child was Jesus rather than a symbol of solar rebirth or substitute for sacrificial victim. The decorations were crucial. Romans hung laurel, holly, and ivy during Saturnalia. These evergreens symbolized life persisting through winter's death. They were sacred to Saturn. Christians adopted identical decorations, identical plants, but declared them symbols of Christ's eternal life. Same greenery, different God honored. The candles used in Saturnalia to celebrate the returning sun became symbols of Christ, the light of the world. Same candles, same fire, different meaning assigned. The feast remained central. The Church could not eliminate feasting without making Christmas unappealing, so they sanctified it. Eating became celebration of God's abundance. The gifts continued. Christians gave presents to commemorate the Magi bringing gold, frankincense, and myrrh to infant Jesus. Though the Gospel of Matthew mentions these gifts, it provides no date for the Magi's visit. The story was retrofitted onto December 25th to explain why gift-giving already occurred then, why it had occurred during Saturnalia for centuries before Christ was born. By the year 500, Christmas existed as hybrid, Christian in name and justification, pagan in practice and emotional content. A festival that satisfied church authorities wanting to eliminate paganism and common people wanting to keep their winter celebration. Both got what they needed. Neither got what they claimed to want. But Christmas had absorbed only Roman tradition. It had not yet encountered the forests of the north, where winter was darker, where gods demanded different sacrifices, where trees were not decorations, but doorways between worlds, and where bodies hung from branches as gifts to the God who had hanged himself. Part 2. The Hanging God. The body sways in the wind. It has been hanging for 3 days in the sacred grove outside the village. The rope around its neck is leather, specially made, ritually prepared. The man was not a criminal. His stomach contents, analyzed 1,500 years later when his body is pulled from a Danish bog, will show he ate a ritual meal of grains and seeds before death. His hands show no signs of manual labor. He was not a slave. He was chosen. This is Yule, the Germanic winter solstice festival, and it begins with the god who hanged himself. Norse mythology, preserved in texts compiled in Iceland in the 13th century but preserving much older oral tradition, describes how Odin the Allfather, chief of the gods, sacrificed himself to himself. He hung from Yggdrasil, the world tree, for 9 days and 9 nights. He was pierced by his own spear. He was given no food or water. He suffered and screamed. And finally, at the moment of death, he saw the runes, the secret knowledge of the cosmos, and seized them. He died and returned, transformed by knowledge purchased with agony. This myth was not merely story. It was template. It was instruction. It was the pattern that kings and priests and chosen victims followed. When Yule came and the sun reached its lowest point and something had to be done to ensure it would return. We know Germanic tribes practiced human sacrifice. Tacitus, a Roman historian who wrote Germania in 98 in the Common Era, describes Germanic religious practices based on reports from Roman soldiers and traders. He writes that Germanic peoples believe the gods are pleased by the slaughter of human victims. He describes groves where no one may enter without being bound, symbolically becoming a sacrifice. He describes priests who preside over rituals he finds barbaric but effective at maintaining tribal cohesion. 400 years later, Adam of Bremen, a Christian chronicler, describes the temple at Uppsala in Sweden, the most important pagan religious site in Scandinavia. Writing around 1070 after Sweden's nominal conversion to Christianity, but when pagan practices still occurred, he describes a festival held every 9 years. 9 males of every living creature, including humans, were sacrificed. Their bodies were hung in a sacred grove near the temple. The grove was so sacred that each tree was considered divine because of the victim's death and decomposition fertilizing its roots. Archaeological evidence supports this. The Tolland man, discovered in a Danish bog in 1950, died approximately 400 years before the Common Era. He was hanged with a leather rope still perfectly preserved around his neck. His stomach contents showed he had eaten a ritual meal of barley, linseed, and various seeds. His peaceful facial expression suggests he was not struggling when he died. He may have gone willingly. He may have been drugged. He was certainly ritually prepared. He was placed in the bog deliberately. Bogs were sacred spaces, boundaries between earth and water, between life and death, between the world of humans and the world of gods. Bodies placed in bogs were not buried. They were given to the liminal space, the threshold, the place where worlds touched. The Grobal man, another Danish bog body from approximately 300 years before the Common Era, had his throat cut from ear to ear before being placed in the bog. His hands showed no signs of manual labor. He had been well fed before death. He was not a criminal or slave. He was chosen, prepared, killed according to ritual, and given to the bog. Why did Germanic tribes hang people during winter solstice? Why did they cut throats and place bodies in sacred groves and bogs? Because Odin was the hanging god, because the myth demanded reenactment, because knowledge required sacrifice, because the sun had to be convinced to return. The festival had multiple purposes layered together: appeasing gods who controlled weather, ensuring spring would follow winter, renewing the king's power through mimicking divine sacrifice, maintaining cosmic order by repeating creation's original patterns, and feeding the sacred trees that connected earth to heaven, that housed spirits that were themselves divine. The sacred grove was not horror to Germanic peoples. It was holiest sight. The bodies hanging from branches, decomposing through winter, dripping blood and fluids onto roots, feeding the trees, making them stronger, making the grove more sacred. This was not defilement. This was consecration. Death created life. Sacrifice created blessing. Animal sacrifice accompanied human sacrifice. Horses were particularly valued. The horse was Odin's animal. His 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, carried him between worlds. Sacrificing horses honored Odin directly. The blood was collected in bowls and sprinkled on altars, walls, and participants. This blood sprinkling sanctified everything it touched. It marked you as protected, as chosen, as part of the sacred community that had given to the gods and earned their favor. Ibn Fadlan, an Arab traveler who visited the Vikings in 922, described witnessing such rituals. He was horrified by what he saw. The casual brutality, the amount of blood, the celebratory atmosphere surrounding slaughter. He described a funeral where a slave woman was killed and placed in a ship with her master to serve him in the afterlife. He described the community participating, drinking, celebrating, viewing the death as necessary and good. The feast that followed sacrifice was sacred communion. The meat of sacrificed animals was boiled in great cauldrons. It was distributed. Everyone ate. Eating sacrificial flesh bonded participants to the gods and to each other. You became what you ate. You incorporated the sacred. Ale was crucial to Yule. The Yule ale, brewed specifically for the festival using the year's best grain, was consumed in vast quantities. Toasting was mandatory and formalized. First toast to Odin for victory. Second toast to Njord and Freyr for peace and good harvest. Third toast to the king. Then toasts to dead ancestors, ensuring their continued protection from the afterlife. This drinking was not casual. It was ritual intoxication, deliberately altering consciousness to enable communion with divine forces. Drunkenness brought visions. It brought prophecies. It brought contact with the dead who walked during Yule's 12 days when the barrier between worlds thinned. The wild hunt, one of the most terrifying aspects of Yule, manifested during these liminal days. Odin led his spectral army across the winter sky. They hunted souls. Anyone caught outside when the hunt passed would be swept up, killed, or driven mad. Hearing the hunt meant hiding indoors, closing shutters, making no sound until the thunder of hooves and baying of hounds passed overhead. This belief persisted for centuries after Christianization. Medieval chronicles from Germany, France, and England all describe the wild hunt appearing during winter. The leader's identity changed. Odin became the devil or a cursed nobleman. But the hunt remained. Spectral riders, hellish hounds, death for those caught outside. The 12 days of Yule were liminal time, dangerous time, sacred time. Normal rules did not apply. The dead walked, magic worked, prophecies could be obtained. But danger lurked everywhere. You had to know the correct rituals, the correct words, the correct offerings to make it through safely. When Christianity arrived in Germanic lands, it faced the same challenge it had faced in Rome. How to eliminate Yule without making Christianity seem foreign and joyless. How to convince people to abandon festivals they loved, festivals that connected them to ancestors, to land, to gods who had protected them for generations. The answer was identical to Rome's solution: absorb Yule, keep the date, the feasting, the 12 days, the greenery, the fires, change the meaning, replace Odin with Christ. The 12 days of Christmas, celebrated from December 25th to January 6th, are Yule's 12 days renamed. The greenery brought indoors, the sacred trees brought into homes, now symbolized Christ's eternal life, rather than housing spirits or honoring Odin's hanging sacrifice. The Yule log, a massive tree trunk brought into the hall and burned continuously for 12 days, was the most direct carryover. The log had to be oak or ash, wood sacred to Thor and Odin. It was decorated with greenery. It was blessed before lighting. The fire protected the home from evil spirits during the dangerous liminal period. Ashes were saved for magical protection or spread on fields for fertility. The hanging of greenery inside homes during Christmas comes directly from Germanic practice. Holly, ivy, and mistletoe were sacred to various gods. Mistletoe particularly was both sacred and dangerous. It had killed Balder, the shining god in Norse myth. Yet mistletoe was also healing, protective, potent with magic because it grew between earth and sky, rooted in neither, belonging to both. Kissing under mistletoe has no Christian justification. It is fertility magic, sympathetic ritual ensuring reproduction, life continuing despite winter's death threat. The Church condemned the practice repeatedly in medieval writings. It continued anyway because people remembered, even when they forgot why, that some customs mattered more than theology. The Christmas tree itself does not appear in written records until the 16th century in Germany, but it represents the culmination of tree worship that had existed for thousands of years. Trees were sacred. Certain trees housed spirits. Cutting sacred trees without permission meant death. Blood was poured at roots. Bodies hung from branches. Offerings were placed on limbs. The first documented Christmas tree in Strasbourg in 1539 was decorated with apples, wafers, and gingerbread. These decorations were not random. Apples represented the fruit from Eden, but also the golden apples of Odin in Norse myth that gave gods immortality. Wafers represented communion, but also ritual cakes offered to tree spirits. Gingerbread was shaped into figures, edible versions of the wax sigillaria from Saturnalia, and before that, substitutes for human offerings. The tree stands in your house today because 1,500 years ago, bodies hung from trees in sacred groves. The evergreen survives winter because it houses something that does not die. You bring it inside because bringing sacred wilderness into domestic space creates protection. You decorate it because offerings must be hung on sacred trees. You place a star on top because the world tree connects earth to heaven, to the stars, to the realm where gods dwell. Every year you recreate the sacred grove in your living room. Every year you honor gods whose names you have forgotten. Every year you participate in winter solstice magic that predates Christianity by thousands of years. You do it without knowing. You do it because your ancestors did it. But before the tree could enter Victorian parlors and modern living rooms, before Christmas could become domestic and sentimental, it had to survive its own death. It had to endure being banned, forbidden, criminalized by Christians who recognized that Christmas was not Christian at all. Part 3. Christmas executed. The soldiers enter the house without knocking. It is December 25th, 1647, Canterbury, England. They have legal authority. Parliament has banned Christmas. Anyone celebrating is breaking the law. Inside, a family sits at table. A goose, roasted bread, ale. The children are dressed in their best clothes. Holly hangs on the walls. This is illegal. All of it. The feast, the decoration, the very act of not working on December 25th. The soldiers confiscate the food. They tear down the holly. They issue a fine. If the family cannot pay, the father will be imprisoned. The children cry. The mother protests. It does not matter. Christmas is forbidden. This scene repeated across England during the Commonwealth period, when Puritans controlled Parliament and enforced their vision of pure Christianity. And their vision had no room for Christmas. The Puritan objection to Christmas was both theological and moral. Theologically, Christmas lacked biblical basis. The Bible provides no birth date for Jesus. The Gospels do not describe disciples celebrating his birth. Early Christians did not observe Christmas. The festival was invented centuries later by the Catholic Church, which Puritans viewed as corrupt, apostate, barely Christian at all. The very idea of holy days beyond the Sabbath was suspect. God had ordained the seventh day for rest and worship. Creating additional holy days was human presumption, adding to God's word. Christmas, Easter, Whitsuntide, these were Catholic inventions. They must be eliminated. Morally, Christmas was excuse for sin. The drinking, the gluttony, the gambling, the sexual license that characterized English Christmas in the early 17th century appalled Puritans. They saw no difference between Christmas and pagan festivals like Saturnalia. Both involved excess. Both dishonored God through encouraging appetites of flesh. Both must end. When Puritans gained power during the English Civil War that began in 1642, they acted immediately. In 1644, Parliament passed an ordinance declaring that December 25th should be a day of fasting and humiliation, not feasting and celebration. Anyone observing Christmas with traditional festivities was committing sin. The reaction was immediate and furious. Common people loved Christmas. It was the year's highlight, the time when scarcity became abundance, when hierarchy relaxed, when joy was permitted. Taking it away created explosive resentment. In 1647, Parliament abolished Christmas entirely along with Easter and Whitsuntide. The Directory for Public Worship, which replaced the Book of Common Prayer, made no mention of Christmas. Churches were forbidden to hold special services. Ministers who preached Christmas sermons faced removal from their positions. In 1652, Parliament went further. They required shops to stay open on December 25th. Markets had to operate. Anyone caught celebrating Christmas could be fined or imprisoned. This was not mere disapproval. This was criminalization. Enforcement was aggressive. Soldiers patrolled streets looking for signs of celebration. They peered into windows. They listened for singing. They smelled for roasting meat. When they found violations, they entered homes without warrants, confiscated food, tore down decorations, arrested celebrants. The people resisted. In Canterbury in 1647, when the mayor enforced the Christmas ban, riots erupted. Shops refusing to open were vandalized. The mayor was assaulted by mobs. Football matches, traditional Christmas sport, were played in streets as deliberate defiance. The mayor called for military reinforcement. The riots continued for days. In 1648, Christmas Day fell on a Sunday, creating theological crisis. Puritans required Sunday observance as Sabbath, but they had banned Christmas. What took priority? In Ipswich, when authorities tried to prevent Christmas celebration, apprentices took over the town. They proclaimed a lord of misrule, the traditional festival king. They forced shops to close. They celebrated publicly, daring authorities to stop them. The authorities did stop them eventually with violence. Rioters were arrested, leaders were imprisoned, some were executed, not specifically for celebrating Christmas, but for riot, for rebellion, for defying lawful authority. Christmas had become political. Celebrating it was nearly treason. Royalist propaganda seized on the Christmas ban as proof of Puritan extremism. Pamphlets appeared defending Christmas as ancient English custom. One titled The Vindication of Christmas, published in 1653, personified Christmas as a benevolent old man being murdered by joyless fanatics. Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector from 1653 to 1658, enforced the ban strictly. His government viewed Christmas celebration as political act signaling loyalty to the old royalist order, to the executed King Charles, to everything the Commonwealth opposed. Celebrating Christmas was defiance. Defiance was punished. But enforcement was uneven. In London and major cities, soldiers could patrol and intimidate. In rural areas, enforcement was impossible. Too many villages, too few soldiers. People celebrated secretly. They closed shutters, they muffled sounds, they hid food, they pretended compliance while maintaining tradition. The Presbyterian Church in Scotland banned Christmas even more effectively. From 1640 until 1958, Christmas was not an official holiday in Scotland. 318 years. Shops and businesses remained open on December 25th. Churches held no services. The winter celebration shifted to Hogmanay, New Year's Eve, which had no Christian association and thus could not be banned. In Massachusetts, Puritan colonists brought their Christmas hatred to the New World. In 1659, the Massachusetts General Court passed a law making Christmas observance illegal. The statute stated clearly, "Whosoever shall be found observing any such day as Christmas or the like, either by forbearing of labor, feasting, or any other way, shall pay for every such offense 5 shillings." 5 shillings was a significant sum for poor families. The law remained in effect until 1681. Even after repeal, New England culture rejected Christmas for generations. It was Catholic custom. It was Anglican tradition. It was not Puritan, therefore it was not American. Schools remained open on December 25th. Businesses operated normally. Churches held no special services. Christmas in New England did not exist in any meaningful form until the mid-19th century. The English ban failed when the monarchy was restored in 1660. King Charles II returned from exile. The Puritans lost power. Christmas returned immediately. The first Christmas under restored monarchy, December 1660, was reportedly the most raucous celebration in living memory. Pent-up desire for festival exploded. Theaters reopened. Plays banned under Puritan rule were performed. Feasting resumed on extravagant scale. Churches held elaborate services with music and ceremony the Puritans had forbidden. But the Puritan period left permanent marks. It demonstrated that Christmas, despite lacking biblical mandate, was culturally essential. People would not abandon it even under threat of imprisonment. This revealed that Christmas served needs deeper than theology. It was not about Christ's birth. It was about human need for midwinter celebration, for light in darkness, for temporary escape from hardship and hierarchy. The failure also proved that Christmas could not be reformed morally. If Puritans with full government power could not eliminate Christmas excess, no one could. The Church of England, restored to authority, accepted Christmas as it was, hybrid festival, partly sacred, partly profane, impossible to control but too important to eliminate. Interestingly, Puritan skepticism about Christmas did not disappear. It resurfaced in other Protestant denominations. Baptists, Presbyterians, some Reformed churches continued viewing Christmas suspiciously. They did not celebrate it, or did so minimally, viewing it as Catholic corruption. This skepticism persisted into the 19th century. As late as 1855, American churches debated whether Christmas should be observed. The Presbyterian General Assembly declared Christmas was not biblical holy day and should not be celebrated. What changed this was not theological argument. It was cultural pressure. As Christmas became increasingly commercial and secular in the 19th century, as it became less about Christ and more about family, gifts, and sentiment, Protestant resistance weakened. If Christmas was not primarily religious, theological objections lost force. By 1900, nearly all Christian denominations in America and Britain celebrated Christmas, though with varying enthusiasm. The holiday had become unavoidable. Culture demanded it, economics drove it, resistance was futile. The Puritans proved something crucial about Christmas. It was not Christian holy day that could be defended on biblical grounds. It was cultural festival that Christianity had absorbed but could not control. The pagan elements, the excess, the inversion, the need for midwinter celebration, these were stronger than any theological framework. Christmas could be reinterpreted, it could be reformed, it could be commercialized and secularized, but it could not be killed. The Puritans tried with legal authority, military force, theological argument, and moral condemnation. They failed completely. But if the Puritans could not kill Christmas, who resurrected it? Who took the dying festival and transformed it into the global celebration we know today? Who invented the Christmas we think is ancient and traditional? One man more than any other. Part 4. Dickens' Ghosts. The candle burns low in Charles Dickens' study. It is October 1843. He is writing quickly, urgently. He has 6 weeks to finish the manuscript before Christmas. The story is pouring out of him. A miser visited by ghosts, a transformation, a celebration, a moral lesson wrapped in sentiment and supernatural terror. He does not know he is inventing modern Christmas. He thinks he is writing a simple story about generosity and redemption. But A Christmas Carol will do more to shape how humans celebrate Christmas than any theological text, any church decree, any tradition passed down through generations. By 1843, Christmas in England was dying. The medieval customs had faded. The Puritan ban had broken transmission of tradition. The Industrial Revolution had made sustained celebration impossible for working people who labored year-round with minimal time off. Christmas was observed, but not enthusiastically. It was fading into irrelevance. Dickens resurrected it, not the Christmas that had existed, a new Christmas, Victorian Christmas, the Christmas we still celebrate. A Christmas Carol was published December 19, 1843. 6,000 copies sold in the first week. By January, it was sold out. Pirated editions flooded the market. Stage adaptations opened within months. The story became embedded in English culture immediately and permanently. The plot is simple. Ebenezer Scrooge, a miserly businessman who hates Christmas, is visited on Christmas Eve by 3 ghosts. The ghost of Christmas past shows him his younger, happier self. The ghost of Christmas present shows him how others celebrate while he isolates himself. The ghost of Christmas yet to come shows him dying alone, unmourned, his wealth meaning nothing. Scrooge wakes Christmas morning transformed. He becomes generous, joyful, loving. He saves Tiny Tim, his employee's disabled son. He becomes the embodiment of Christmas spirit. The story is sentimental, moralistic, and structurally simple, but it worked because it synthesized Victorian anxieties and offered solutions wrapped in Christmas celebration. Victorian England was brutal. Industrial capitalism created vast wealth and vast poverty, often in close proximity. Factories worked children to death. Cities were overcrowded, polluted, diseased. Class divisions were stark and seemingly permanent. Work was endless. Life was hard. Christmas offered temporary escape. For one day, perhaps 12 if you were fortunate, you could pretend that family mattered more than money, that generosity was more important than profit, that human connection transcended class. Dickens made this explicit. Scrooge represents industrial capitalism at its worst, cold, calculating, viewing humans as economic units. His transformation represents what Victorians wanted to believe was possible, that even the hardest heart could be softened. That Christmas could change people, that generosity and love could triumph over greed. The story popularized specific Christmas elements that became standard. The family gathering centered on children. The Christmas dinner with turkey, plum pudding, all the traditional foods. The emphasis on charity and thinking of those less fortunate. The ghost story told at Christmas. The idea that Christmas is time for moral transformation. Dickens wrote 4 more Christmas books: The Chimes, The Cricket on the Hearth, The Battle of Life, The Haunted Man. None achieved Carol's success, but they reinforced the message. Christmas is about feeling, about warmth, about generosity, about transformation. This sentimentalization served Victorian needs perfectly. Christmas became emotional pressure valve. The factories would reopen, the poverty would continue, the class system would remain. But for Christmas, you could pretend otherwise. You could feel generous without changing the system that created need for charity. The Christmas tree, now universal symbol, was popularized by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. Albert was German. He brought Christmas tree tradition from his homeland. The royal family erected decorated tree at Windsor Castle in the 1840s. In 1848, the Illustrated London News published engraving of Victoria, Albert, and their children gathered around Christmas tree. This image was reprinted across England and America. If the Queen had Christmas tree, everyone wanted one. By the 1850s, Christmas trees appeared in middle-class homes. By the 1870s, they were nearly universal in houses that could afford them. The tree was perfect Victorian symbol. It brought nature indoors, civilizing wilderness. It required decoration, allowing display of taste and wealth. It centered family gathering. It combined Christian symbolism with pagan roots that were conveniently forgotten. Christmas cards were invented in this period. Sir Henry Cole commissioned the first commercial Christmas card in 1843, the same year as A Christmas Carol. The card showed family gathering, toasting the viewer with wine. It was hand-colored lithograph, expensive to produce. By the 1860s, advances in printing technology made Christmas cards affordable for middle class. Millions were sold annually. The cards depicted snow scenes, robins, holly, family gatherings, sentimental verses. They were sent to friends and family, maintaining social connections in increasingly mobile society. The Christmas cracker was invented by Tom Smith in 1847. He adapted French bonbon wrappers, adding explosive snap when pulled apart. Crackers contained small gifts, paper hats, jokes. They became essential to Christmas dinner, adding playful element to what was otherwise formal meal. Carol singing, which had nearly died out, was revived and sanitized. Victorian composers wrote new carols in traditional style. Old carols were rediscovered and published in collections. The first major carol collection, Christmas Carols New and Old, was published in 1871. Carol singing became respectable middle-class activity. Previously, caroling was associated with lower classes going house to house demanding food and drink. Victorians transformed this into wholesome activity, spreading Christmas cheer through song. The Victorian Christmas emphasized domesticity. Christmas was home-centered, not church-centered. The crucial moments occurred at home, decorating the tree, opening presents, eating dinner, gathering around fire. Church attendance on Christmas was optional. Family gathering was mandatory. This shift reflected Victorian ideology of separate spheres. Men belonged to public sphere of work and politics. Women belonged to private sphere of home and family. Christmas was women's domain. Women decorated. Women cooked. Women organized. Women created the domestic harmony that made Christmas magical. Gift-giving became central and expanded dramatically. Previously, gifts were small tokens, fruits, nuts, simple cakes. Victorians made gift-giving elaborate, toys for children. Books, jewelry, clothing, household items. The gifts demonstrated affection, but also social status. Department stores, developing in mid-Victorian period, capitalized on Christmas gift-giving. They created elaborate window displays featuring mechanical scenes, animated figures, fantasy landscapes. They advertised extensively in newspapers and magazines. They encouraged shopping as essential Christmas preparation. By the 1880s, Christmas shopping was established middle-class ritual that consumed November and December. The poor were not forgotten in Victorian Christmas ideology, but were treated as objects of charity, not participants in celebration. The wealthy gave to the poor at Christmas, food baskets, coal for heating, clothing, small cash gifts. This charity was conspicuous, public, self-congratulatory. Scrooge exemplifies this perfectly. His transformation involves giving turkey to the Cratchits, his clerk's family. He raises Bob Cratchit's salary. He becomes second father to Tiny Tim, but Cratchit remains Scrooge's employee. The class relationship does not change fundamentally. Scrooge becomes benevolent master rather than cruel one. The system that creates poverty remains unchanged. Victorian Christmas also emphasized nostalgia. Christmas was portrayed as ancient English tradition, unchanged for centuries, connecting present to idealized past. This was false. Christmas was constantly changing, constantly adapting. But Victorians needed to believe in timeless tradition. They were experiencing such rapid change through industrialization, urbanization, empire expansion that they craved stability, permanence, connection to past. Christmas provided this through invented tradition. The customs presented as ancient were often recent innovations. Christmas trees were new. Carol singing had been revived. Gift-giving on this scale was new. But presenting these as timeless traditions satisfied psychological need for continuity amid radical change. This invented tradition was brilliantly successful. By 1900, Victorian Christmas was so firmly established it seemed natural, eternal, inevitable. People forgot that Christmas trees were recent innovation. They forgot carol singing had nearly died. They forgot gift-giving had been transformed from small tokens to elaborate exchange. They believed they were celebrating Christmas as it had always been celebrated. This belief persists. Modern people think Victorian Christmas is traditional Christmas. They are correct. Victorian Christmas is traditional. But the tradition is only 180 years old. In Christmas, 2,000-year evolution, this is very recent. The Victorians did not restore Christmas. They invented new Christmas from scattered elements, Roman Saturnalia's gift-giving, Germanic Yule's greenery and fire, St. Nicholas charity, medieval feasting and celebration. They added sentiment, domesticity, focus on children, moral lessons about generosity and transformation. They wrapped it in nostalgia. They declared it sacred tradition. They sold it brilliantly. Victorian Christmas conquered the world. British Empire spread it globally. American economic and cultural power reinforced it in the 20th century. By 1950, Victorian Christmas was global Christmas. But beneath the sentiment, Victorian Christmas served capitalism perfectly. It required consumption, gifts, food, decorations, cards, trees, all purchased. It trained people to view shopping as emotional act, expression of love. It created annual buying cycle predictable and profitable for businesses. By 1900, Christmas commercialization was well advanced. The Victorians, who had reinvented Christmas as antidote to industrial capitalism's coldness, had inadvertently made it capitalism's greatest tool. The festival that was supposed to celebrate values opposed to marketplace had become the marketplace's most important event. But commercialization had barely begun. The 20th century would take Victorian Christmas and industrialize it, globalize it, turn it into machine generating hundreds of billions in revenue annually. And the key to this transformation would be a figure the Victorians had marginalized, a holy bishop about to be reborn as the most successful advertising icon in human history. Part 5. The Red-Suited Lie. The man in the red suit is not real. You know this, but knowing changes nothing. Every December he appears everywhere, on billboards, in stores, on television, in your home if you have children who believe or pretend to believe. He is fat, jolly, white-bearded, always smiling. He judges you. He rewards you. He demands nothing except that you consume. This is Santa Claus, and he is the culmination of Christmas' 2,000-year evolution from blood sacrifice to shopping season. Saint Nicholas of Myra, who lived approximately 270 to 343 in the Common Era, was real. He was bishop in what is now Turkey. He attended the Council of Nicaea in 325, where he allegedly struck the heretic Arius in the face for denying Christ's divinity. He gave his inherited wealth to the poor. He died December 6th. His bones were stolen by Italian merchants in 1087 and taken to Bari, where they remain. Medieval Christians venerated Nicholas as patron saint of children, sailors, merchants, and those unjustly accused. Legends described him resurrecting murdered children, saving sailors from storms, providing dowries to poor girls to prevent them being sold into prostitution. He was fierce defender of orthodoxy and the innocent. He was not jolly. He was not fat. He was not particularly associated with Christmas. But Nicholas' feast day, December 6th, was close to Christmas. By medieval times, gift-giving occurred on both days. When Protestantism rejected saint veneration, Nicholas needed transformation to survive. He became secularized, divorced from Catholic sainthood, transformed into folk figure. Dutch colonists brought Sinterklaas to New Amsterdam, later New York, in the 17th century. Sinterklaas wore bishop's robes, carried pastoral staff, rode white horse. He arrived by ship from Spain, brought gifts to good children, while his servant, Zwarte Piet, punished naughty ones. Zwarte Piet reveals Christmas' racial dimension. Piet was depicted as dark-skinned, subservient, associated with punishment. The traditional explanation claims Piet is black from chimney soot, but the figure clearly embodies racist colonial imagery. The dark servant doing the master's dirty work, simultaneously comic and threatening. American transformation of Sinterklaas into Santa Claus occurred in the 19th century through deliberate invention. Washington Irving, in his satirical History of New York published in 1809, described a jolly Dutch figure riding over rooftops delivering gifts. This was fiction. Irving invented traditions and attributed them to Dutch colonists who never practiced them. Clement Clarke Moore's poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, published anonymously in 1823, created modern Santa's template. The poem described St. Nicholas as chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf with sleigh pulled by 8 named reindeer, entering through chimneys, filling stockings with gifts. This was radical reimagining. The stern bishop became an elf. The solemn saint became jolly. The December 6th gift giver moved to Christmas Eve, and crucially, the religious figure became secular. Moore's Santa required no faith, no church attendance, no Christian belief. He rewarded good behavior and punished bad, operating on purely moral, not theological basis. Thomas Nast, political cartoonist, illustrated Santa in Harper's Weekly during the 1860s through 1880s. Nast gave Santa his North Pole workshop, his list of naughty and nice children, his army of elves manufacturing toys. He depicted Santa as fat, white-bearded man in fur-trimmed red suit. This visual became standard across America. But Santa's final transformation from folk figure to corporate icon occurred in the 20th century through systematic commercial exploitation. Department stores adopted Santa as marketing tool. Macy's in New York featured Santa in window displays by the 1860s. By the 1890s, department stores hired men to dress as Santa, sitting on thrones while children told them what gifts they wanted. Parents, overhearing, felt obligated to purchase those items. This was marketing genius. Children became unwitting advertisers, telling Santa their desires while parents listened and compiled shopping lists. The ritual of visiting Santa normalized shopping as Christmas activity. Coca-Cola's Santa campaign, beginning in 1931, globalized Santa's image and cemented his association with consumption. Artist Haddon Sundblom painted Santa for Coca-Cola advertisements through 1964. His Santa was grandfatherly, warm, rosy-cheeked, always holding or drinking Coca-Cola. The red suit matched Coca-Cola's branding perfectly. Coca-Cola did not invent Santa's red suit. Red suits existed earlier, but Coca-Cola standardized the image and spread it globally through massive advertising budgets. By 1950, Sundblom's Santa was recognized worldwide. Regional variations persisted, but increasingly children everywhere expected the same fat, jolly, red-suited figure. Other corporations followed Coca-Cola's strategy. Associate your product with Christmas. Make it seem essential to proper celebration. Kodak advertised cameras for capturing Christmas memories. Jewelry companies pushed engagement rings for Christmas proposals. Toy manufacturers created must-have toys, generating artificial scarcity and parent panic. The post-World War II economic boom accelerated Christmas commercialization. Americans had money. They had experienced depression and wartime rationing. They were ready to spend. Christmas became showcase for prosperity. The gifts under the tree demonstrated success. Television revolutionized Christmas marketing. Christmas specials combined entertainment with advertising. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, created as Montgomery Ward promotional gimmick in 1939, became television special in 1964. Children watched Rudolph's story while advertisements sold products to parents. A Charlie Brown. Christmas aired in 1965, explicitly criticized Christmas commercialization. Charlie Brown laments that Christmas has become too commercial. Linus recites Luke's nativity account, reminding viewers of Christmas' religious meaning. The special won Emmy Award. It became annual tradition, but its anti-commercial message was undercut by advertising sponsors and by becoming profitable property through repeated airings and merchandise sales. Even criticism of commercialization was commercialized. Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, became official start of Christmas shopping season in mid-20th century. The name allegedly came from Philadelphia police describing the chaos of crowds and traffic. Retailers reframed it positively, claiming it was when stores' accounting went from red ink to black ink, from loss to profit. By the 1980s, Christmas shopping dominated November and December. Retailers depended on Christmas sales for a significant portion of annual revenue. Stores that did not achieve profitability during Christmas season often failed. Credit cards, widely adopted in 1960s and 70s, enabled unprecedented Christmas spending. People could buy more than they could afford, paying later with interest. Christmas debt became normalized. People went into debt to buy gifts, then spent January through March paying off credit cards. The psychology was deliberate manipulation. Advertising associated gifts with love. Not buying gifts or buying insufficient or cheap gifts meant you did not love recipients enough. This emotional manipulation was effective. People overspent rather than appear unloving to family. Children were targeted systematically. Saturday morning cartoons were essentially extended toy commercials. Television shows were created specifically to sell toys. He-Man, Transformers, My Little Pony, G.I. Joe. These were 30-minute advertisements with minimal plot, maximum product placement. Toy manufacturers created artificial scarcity, limiting releases of popular toys to generate panic buying. Parents paid inflated prices from scalpers. Some fought other parents physically to secure toys their children demanded. The Tickle Me Elmo craze of 1996 epitomized this. The toy was everywhere in advertising but scarce in stores. Prices soared, violence erupted. Christmas music became commercial tool. Retailers played Christmas music in stores to create sentimental atmosphere encouraging spending. Studies showed Christmas music made shoppers feel more generous, more willing to buy, less price sensitive. New Christmas songs were written primarily to sell records. Bing Crosby's White Christmas, recorded 1942, became best-selling single ever, but it was commercial product created for profit. Many songs presented as Christmas classics were not originally Christmas songs. Jingle Bells, written 1857, was secular winter sleighing song. Winter Wonderland and Let It Snow were winter songs. They were rebranded as Christmas songs to sell more records during Christmas season. Religious Christmas music existed but was increasingly sidelined commercially. Retail stores preferred secular songs. No theological content meant no risk of offending non-Christian customers. Jingle Bells and Rudolph were safe. Silent Night and O Come All Ye Faithful were risky in pluralistic marketplace. This secularization was corporate strategy. Christmas could not be marketed exclusively to Christians. It had to appeal to everyone to maximize profits. Religious content was minimized or eliminated. Christmas became about family, generosity, snow, Santa, reindeer, trees, gifts. Jesus became optional. By 2000, Christmas generated over $600 billion annually in the United States alone. Globally, the figure exceeded $1 trillion. This was not holiday. This was economic infrastructure. Entire industries depended on Christmas. Online shopping, exploding in 1990s and 2000s, expanded Christmas commerce further. Amazon, founded 1994, made shopping frictionless. You could buy from home anytime, accessing global inventory. This increased spending and extended shopping season. Cyber Monday, created 2005 as online equivalent of Black Friday, became major shopping day within years. The 21st century brought Christmas to non-Christian countries. China, Japan, South Korea, nations with minimal Christian populations, adopted Christmas as commercial holiday. They celebrated with trees, gifts, Santa, minus religious content. This was pure commercial Christmas, the final evolution. A festival celebrating nothing except consumption itself. The man in the red suit you see in stores is not St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas struck heretics. He gave away his fortune. He died for his faith. The modern Santa Claus is his opposite. A figure created to encourage you to buy more. He is the final transformation of a Christian saint into an advertising icon. But one question remains. What is Christmas actually? After 2,000 years of transformation, after layers of Roman sacrifice and Germanic hanging and Christian theology and Victorian sentiment and corporate marketing, what lies at the center? Part 6. What lies beneath your tree? The tree stands in your house. You decorated it. You placed gifts beneath it. You lit it. It glows in darkness. It is beautiful, but what is it? A sacred tree from Germanic groves where bodies hung as offerings to Odin. An evergreen symbolizing life that does not die, even in winter's depths. A Roman symbol of Saturn's festival brought indoors. A Christian symbol of eternal life through Christ. A Victorian invention marketed as ancient tradition. Retail's most important sales tool. It is all of these. It is none of these. It is what you make it. This is Christmas truth. It has no fixed meaning. It means whatever culture, whoever is celebrating, projects onto it. For ancient Romans, it meant Saturn's golden age temporarily restored through ritual inversion. For Germanic tribes, it meant appeasing Odin and ensuring spring's return through sacrifice. For medieval Christians, it meant celebrating Christ's birth while continuing pagan customs barely disguised. For Puritans, it meant corruption that must be eliminated. For Victorians, it meant domestic sentiment and moral transformation. For corporations, it means profit. For you, it means whatever you need it to mean. This is Christmas power and its emptiness. Because if Christmas means everything, it means nothing. The blood beneath Christmas. The sacrifices we have traced from Roman altars through Germanic groves, through Puritan prisons, through Victorian factories, through modern shopping mall stampedes. This blood reveals what Christmas has always been. A festival that transforms to survive. A festival that absorbs whatever it encounters. A festival that serves power, whatever form power takes. In Rome, power was the Senate and priesthood. Christmas, then called Saturnalia, reinforced Roman identity and provided controlled release of social tension. In medieval Europe, power was the church and aristocracy. Christmas reinforced hierarchy while providing temporary relief from it. In Puritan England, power was parliamentary authority. Christmas was banned because it contradicted that authority vision. In Victorian England, power was industrial capitalism. Christmas was reinvented to make capitalism more humane without changing its fundamental nature. In modern America, power is corporate capitalism. Christmas serves it perfectly by generating vast consumption, training people to view shopping as love, creating economic dependence on annual buying cycle. Christmas has always served power. It has never challenged power effectively, even when it inverted hierarchy during Saturnalia or medieval Lord of Misrule celebrations. The inversion was temporary, controlled, ultimately reinforcing what it temporarily suspended. This is uncomfortable truth. Christmas is not radical. It is not revolutionary. It is not even particularly Christian, despite nearly 2,000 years of Christian ownership. It is adaptive, absorptive, ultimately conservative festival that changes form to preserve function. And what is that function? To mark time, to provide psychological relief from hardship, to create moments of joy in difficult lives, to give humans light in darkness, feast in scarcity, gifts in poverty, hope in despair. These are not small things. These are essential things. Humans need ritual. We need markers separating ordinary time from sacred time. We need permission to celebrate, to be excessive, to temporarily escape normal constraints. We need these things to remain sane, to endure, to continue. Christmas provides them, imperfectly, hypocritically, through layer upon layer of lies and appropriations and commercial exploitation. But it provides them. The question is whether Christmas is the only way or even the best way to provide them. Whether we could create new winter festivals based on truth rather than accumulated deceptions. Whether we could celebrate light and darkness without supporting systems we claim to oppose. I cannot answer this. I am historian, not prophet. I can tell you what was and what is. I cannot tell you what should be. But I can tell you what you now know. You know that Christmas is not what it claims to be. You know the tree came from human sacrifice groves. You know gift-giving came from substitutes for child offerings. You know Santa Claus is corporate mascot, not Christian saint. You know the sentiment is Victorian invention, not ancient wisdom. You know commercialization is not corruption of pure tradition, but inevitable result of how Christmas has always functioned. You know Christmas is built on blood, theft, lies, and brilliant adaptability that has allowed it to survive 2,000 years by constantly changing while claiming to never change. What you do with this knowledge is your choice. You can celebrate Christmas consciously, aware of its layers, participating in tradition while understanding its construction. You can reject Christmas entirely, refusing to participate in festival you now see clearly. You can adapt Christmas to serve values you actually hold, keeping what seems valuable, discarding what does not. All of these are legitimate responses. None is superior. Because Christmas is not sacred, it is human. And like all human creations, it is complicated, compromised, and ultimately whatever we make it. If you celebrate this December, you will join 2 billion people participating in the same festival with radically different understandings of what they are doing. Some celebrate Christ's birth, some celebrate family, some celebrate consumerism, some celebrate winter itself. All use the same symbols, speak the same language, participate in the same traditions. This unity through shared practice, despite different beliefs, is perhaps Christmas' greatest achievement. It has created global ritual that transcends theology, transcends culture, transcends even capitalism, though capitalism has thoroughly colonized it. The tree stands, the lights glow, the gifts are given, the songs are sung, and for brief time, despite everything you now know, despite the blood and lies and commercial exploitation, you might feel something like joy, something like connection, something like hope. That feeling is real even if its sources are false. That feeling matters even if it was manufactured. That feeling is why Christmas survives, why it has survived 2,000 years, why it will survive 2,000 more in some form we cannot predict. Because humans need it. Not the specific forms, not the theological justifications, not the commercial machinery, but the core function. Marking winter's darkness with light, marking isolation with connection, marking scarcity with abundance. Even if that abundance is temporary, even if that connection is commercial, even if that light is literally manufactured, we are animals who need ritual. Christmas is ritual that has survived by being endlessly adaptable. It will adapt again. It will absorb whatever comes next. It will claim to be ancient while being perpetually new. It will serve power while claiming to transcend it. It will promise things it cannot deliver while delivering things it does not promise. This is what Christmas is. Not what it claims, not what we wish, what it actually, demonstrably, historically is. The complete history of Christmas is the history of human adaptation, survival, creativity, violence, hope, and desperate need for meaning in darkness. It is not story of sacred purity corrupted by modernity. It is story of constant change sold as eternal truth. It is story of conquered becoming conqueror, of absorbed becoming orthodox, of commercial becoming sacred. The tree will stand as long as someone plants it. The lights will glow as long as someone illuminates them. The gifts will be given as long as someone gives them. And Christmas will continue as long as humans need winter festival, regardless of what we call it or what we claim it means. This is certain. This is verifiable. This is what 2,000 years of documented history proves. Everything else, every meaning you assign, every significance you claim, every emotion you feel, is yours. Christmas is what you make it, nothing more, nothing less. And that finally is enough, because we are what we make ourselves, and the rituals we create, the traditions we perpetuate, the meanings we assign, these are not mere illusions. They are how we construct reality itself. Christmas is real because we make it real. The blood beneath it is real. The lies are real. The commerce is real. But so is the joy, the connection, the light in darkness, the defiance of winter, the hope that spring will come, that life will continue, that we matter enough to mark time's passage with celebration. You cannot unknow what you now know. You cannot unsee the layers. You cannot participate in Christmas with the innocence you had before this journey, but you can participate consciously, honestly, understanding what you are doing and why. The tree stands in your house. You know now what it represents. All of it, the beautiful and the terrible, the sacred and the commercial, the ancient and the invented. Light it anyway, or do not, but make that choice consciously. The blood has been washed away or painted over or forgotten, but it remains in the foundation, supporting everything we build on top. This is Christmas. This is what lies beneath your tree. This is what 2,000 years have constructed. Final part, the breaking seals. 2,000 years of history, from Roman sacrifice altars to your living room, from human sacrifices to gift wrap, from Odin's sacred groves to department stores. You have made the journey. You have seen how blood became tradition, how lies became holy truths, how theft became cultural heritage. You can no longer look innocently at your Christmas tree. You know too much. But perhaps that is good. Perhaps honest choice is better than innocent ignorance. History is not destiny. The past is not prison. You can build something new from old materials if you want. Did you enjoy this dark journey through Christmas true history? Then leave a like. Subscribe to the channel to discover more disturbing secrets sealed in history vaults. Tell me in the comments, which Christmas tradition will you never see the same way again? What will you do differently this year now that you know the truth? And where are you watching from? We might know similar dark stories from your region. Remember, we have many more sealed stories waiting to break free. History matters, not to condemn, but to illuminate, not to destroy, but to reveal, not to tell you what to believe, but to show you what actually happened so you can decide for yourself what it means. The tree stands in your house. You know now what it represents. Light it anyway or do not, but make that choice consciously. See you in the next tomb.